Welcome. We are so excited to have you back for the 7th episode of the Off Meta podcast. I'm Ganesh from Deck Check.
And I'm Samurai Dancer. Today we're looking at a deck that's not Kraken, Lacken, and Gyruda, Doom of the Depths. Welcome to Off Meta, where the brews that are hot shoot their shot.
In this show, we focus on the fascinating off-meta cEDH decks people haven't seen yet, like the absolutely wonderful Gyruda, Doom of Depths. We'll have a fresh new episode every Friday by 6 p.m. Central Time.
Off Meta is not responsible for the tournament results of cards or decks mentioned on Off Meta. If you are interested in a deck appearing on Off Meta, or would you like to appear yourself, just go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and reach out on our Discord.
Coming up on the Off Meta podcast.
It's really fun to just play a big dude and flip into more big dudes, right? Kind of like the Kennen game plan, like the old Kennen strategy, just flipping into big stuff. Lots of fun. It's like you're playing the slot machines, kind of.
Yes. So first up, we have a very quick section for off-meta news, where we share with you off-meta decks that have performed well in the past couple weeks. So at Saltfest, we had coincidentally, a Gyruda Doom of Depths deck. So I'm not going to go over this one, because we're about to go into a full deck tech with Nybar, the foremost player of this deck, right after this section, so stay tuned.
But we also had Voja. That's right, folks. Not only is it a casual commander nightmare, it's also a nightmare for cEDH. It takes advantage of doubling up triggers and getting more and more 1/1 counters. It's sort of a Stacks Elves deck, not a surprise there, but it's using the new card, Bristly Pete, and Annie Joins Up from Thunder Junction. And they've also kind of opted into some also Western-themed alternate arts.
What does Annie Teams Up do, and what is that?
Okay, so when it enters the battlefield, it's a Nyana colorless, there we go. It has one of ETBs, it deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and then when a legendary effect would trigger on a creature you control, it doubles up that trigger. So Voja, I don't know if you noticed, Voja is a pretty cool creature. It has this wonderful, wonderful set of stats that state that when it attacks, each creature you control gets a +1/+1 counter for each elf you have. And then it draws a card for each wolf you have.
Yep.
It costs 2 Naya. It has Vigilance, Trample, Ward 3. And it's a 5.
Yeah, it's a 5/5. Yeah, it's pretty big. Yeah, this can get pretty out of hand. Like, they'll play a couple stack pieces out early game, they'll get Voja out, no one will really care, and then, a couple turns later, you're looking at like 30 power on the board, and you can only cast 1 spell a turn, and it gets pretty rough.
Not only that, but because they're running Roving Throne to double up wolf triggers, they're running Annie Joins Up, and they're running Bristly Pete, by the way, which says when you attack, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, if I remember correctly. Let me look you up, Bristly. No, it's whenever a land enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature, and then you can pay 5 mana and double the number of 1/1 counters on each creature you control.
Oh god. Okay.
Yeah, this deck accelerates so fast into just, you go from so I'm just taking 5, which is, it's not great, but it's just 5, to I'm taking what is this? How many elves you got? 6. So I'm taking an additional 36 damage, and then you're doubling this, so I'm taking additional 12 damage, and then you're doubling the actual, so I'm taking an additional 24 times. Oh no. Yeah, it gets out of hand.
For sure. So next up, we have decks from Commandfest San Francisco. So we have a rising star here, Stella Lee, which took 3rd place. Very, very impressive for such a new commander. So she is a 3 mana in Izzet. She's a human rogue 2/4. And she has, whenever you cast your 2nd spell each turn, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. But more importantly, she has a tap ability that says tap, copy target instant or sorcery, spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if you've cast 3 or more spells this turn. So this is definitely going to be a more stormy style strategy. Your whole game plan is to get out Stella Lee as fast as possible, and then get to 3 spells in a turn, activate her tap ability, while something like Twisted Fealty is on the stack. This deck is all about running a bunch of instant sources that untap creatures as they go infinite with Stella Lee. So, Twisted Fealty, for example, says gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, and then it gains haste. So it's a 2 and a red. It's a red sorcery. And then also creates a Wicked Roll attached to up to 1 target creature. And then whenever the Wicked Roll is put into graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, if you're copying this an infinite amount of times, you're going to keep making Wicked Rolls and keep attaching them to Stella Lee, and that's just going to drain out the table and kill everybody. In addition to that, this deck is running a lot of that same sort of effect. There's Crimson Wisps. Well, that's not an untapper, but it's going to draw you a card. There's Cerulean Wisps, which is the big one where it turns her blue, it untaps her, and you draws you a card. So with this, you are just going to draw your entire deck. The Crimson Wisps is more of a haste enabler so that you can like get her out quickly and then use her the same turn, which is pretty important because that's your entire game plan. We're also running stuff like Tidal, Boar, Twitch, a lot of cards that you actually tend to see in Orvar, Refocus, which is untap target creature, draw card. So just keep in mind if you ever play against this deck is absolutely filled with this sort of effect. The chances they don't have something that untaps Stella Lee is actually going to be fairly low. Aside from that, this is fairly standard Is it deck. We've got a defense grid in there. We've got Remora, Ristic, and Breach as well. But I do not see... Yeah, though there is a Lens Eye Diamond and Brain Freeze then. Okay. No, yeah, so standard Breach combos. We've got some wheels. Cool. Mm-hmm. Next up,
we're on Azusa Landfall Stacks. Azusa, one of the OG cEDH commanders, was just fell off so hard, so fast. But guess what? It's back. Creatures are good again, lands are getting better, and guess what? Azusa's here to stay. Numerous landfall combos include, obviously, we have our favorite girl in Ashaya, making everything into a land. But more importantly, where Azusa excels that other decks basically fall by the wayside is the fact that there's not really many stacks pieces that hit lands, which means that it will ramp out so fast that people can't compete with it. It's super brutal. It's on so much utility lands. It's on, oh my god. It's got Mariposa Military Base, which is the rad land. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 rad counters. You can pay 5, draw a card. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each rad counter you have. So now it has an infinite draw engine in it. Now, we also have Strip Mine in this deck and Wasteland. Now, here's a fun fact. Ganesh, how many basics do you run in your blue farm deck?
I do not have any basics.
So none? So none. Wasteland hits your whole mana base.
Yep.
How much mana do you have if you can't use artifacts or use lands?
I do not have any mana. There's not a single way besides Simian Spirit to create mana.
Yeah, this is where Azusa shines. She attacks the most fundamental thing in Magic, which is lands. And it's really hard to get over that. In all honesty, it's a nightmare for this deck to be back, but welcome back, Azusa.
Yeah, I see the Null Rod too, god.
Yeah, Null Rod, it's got the Trinisphere.
Yeah.
This deck has a collector. Ooh, this is definitely just here to say, listen, it's okay. I'm just going to play lands. You guys don't worry about it. But you're killing our lands. Yeah, don't worry about it. But we need lands. Nah, you don't need lands. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to play my lands. It's nothing to be worried about. But our artifacts don't tap. Yeah, well, you shouldn't be playing artifacts anyways. You should be playing more lands. Like I am.
For those that are not familiar, Azusa is a 3-mana 1/2, and she lets you play 2 additional lands in each of your turns, so she's 2 and a green. So she's like a permanent, what is it, double explore? Almost, sort of. Yeah. She
is one of the best 3-drops in the game. She got banned in some formats for a ban. She is just really good at what she does, which is play lands.
I also really like this alt art. I don't know. Hopefully, we have some appreciators in the comments too for this beautiful card. Anyway, next up we have a very interesting Blue Farm style deck, sort of. It's like a hybrid between Blue Farm and Tivit. This took 15th at Saltfest. This is going to be Cecily, Sophina. So these were from the first printed in the Stranger Things Secret Lair. So Cecily is 11, and it's a 1 and a Grixis, so 1 blue, black, red. Legendary Human Wizard, 3/5. Your maximum hand size is 11. Whenever it attacks, you draw a card and you lose a life. And then if you have 11 or more cards in hand, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. And it's got Friends Forever, which is basically partner, but only with other cards that have specifically Friends Forever. And then you have Sophina, Spear Sage Asserter, which is Jim Hopper in the Stranger Things lair. And it's a 4/4 human soldier in Boros, so 2, a red, and a white for a total of 4 mana. It's got Menace, and whenever it attacks, investigate once for each non-token attacking creature. So to investigate, you make a clue token with pay 2 mana, sacrifice it, and you draw a card. So they're both draw engines, which is a bit similar to Blue Farm. It's arguable these are less efficient than Tymna and Crom, which is why we don't see them played instead of Blue Farm, but they're still pretty good, as evidenced by this 15th place finish. The deck overall is very, very reminiscent of Blue Farm, but they also have a very hard emphasis on artifacts and Time Sieve, which is honestly really interesting. A bit like Clue Farm, actually. This is fairly similar to Clue Farm more than any other deck. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think the Azusa deck and this Clue Farm deck fought each other in the main tournament?
I'm starting to feel like that might be why this one is 15th and that one is in 9th place.
I'm like looking at it, I'm like, heavy artifact emphasis. This deck that I just talked about is heavy landfall with anti-art. Did they play each other? Like, it feels like that would be a bad matchup.
Yeah, if they were to get their artifact shut off in this deck. So like this deck is somehow even more artifact focused than like Blue Farm
Tivit.
is. And yeah, and Tivit. Like we have the Goblin Engineer, we have Forensic Gadgeteer, which I've never seen this card before, but it's a 3 mana. Well, it's new, but it's a 3 mana 2/3. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you investigate, and activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. It can't reduce the mana in the cost to less than 1 mana. Makes a lot of sense when you're playing Sophina. You're generating those clues. You need a way to get rid of them. On top of that, this makes you more clues. So just good card in general. Grim Hireling, we don't see this card often, but again, this goes perfectly into our artifact theme. I'll show you the Time Sieve a bit later. But yeah, this is going to make us bunches and bunches of artifacts, even though this has fallen out of Blue Farm lists. In this deck, it's just so good. And we have Myral, Shield of Argive. This is Grand Abolisher, basically. It's a 4 mana, 3/4 legendary human soldier. It has, during your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. And whenever she attacks, you create X 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. Man, that's a mouthful. Where X is the number of soldiers you control. So she's kind of like also a Najeela in a weird way. She's a Grand Abolisher Najeela, and like honestly, that can only be so bad. So you might as well run it. You don't really see this one.
Are you telling me that someone said, hey, what's a good deck? Najeela, what's a good deck? Tivit, what's a good deck? Blue Farm. What if I just ran all 3?
Yeah, like this really, really looks like all 3. Like there's a transmute artifact. Like we don't run that on Blue Farm. Like we don't care about the One Ring that much. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you have a chance, definitely check this deck list out. It will be in the description. If you like Blue Farm, but you don't want to play Blue Farm, try it, and then at the bottom we have Time Sieve. So this is going to be definitely very good in this deck. It's very trivial to make lots and lots of junk tokens, clues, and treasures and such like with our commanders and with our creatures, that even just taking 1 or 2 turns can be unbelievably impactful, because at the end of the day, this is kind of Blue Farm, so taking a few turns in that deck is just so good. And we're also on Grinding Station, which is interesting, but it makes complete sense when we're flooding the board with artifacts. Turning off all those top deck tutors is amazing. It also works very well with Underworld Breach. Just solid card overall. And let me check if we're on Brain Freeze. We are actually not on Brain Freeze. Okay, so Grinding Station is our Brain Freeze in this deck.
Makes sense.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. We are on Brain Freeze. My bad. I missed it.
Does my roll make 1/1 equal to the number of soldiers you have?
Yeah, so you'll start with 1 or 2 with Sophina.
Yeah,
so
I was like, Sophina's a soldier. That's some heavy synergy.
that is good synergy. Yeah, this is going to start doubling at some point. And Esper's also a soldier. So, there's something. Oh, yeah, cool. Check this out. This deck is on Braids. Deck is on the 3 mana beginning of your end step. I know this is in Japanese, but let's see if we can look at the details a little bit here. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent that doesn't, then a player loses 2 life and you draw a card. Really good in this deck. You have all sorts of junk artifacts, and generally other people's artifacts are going to care about because they've paid 2 mana and spent a card on it, whereas you're just pooping them out. You got clues everywhere, treasure tokens. Yeah.
We'll talk about that. This is mid-range hell, where advantage engines reign supreme, and this is a 3-drop advantage engine that's basically a heuristic study.
Yeah, that's really good analysis. This is harder to interact with, at least countering wise as a creature, and just straight up drawing you that 3 is just so good.
Are they on Cavern? It feels like they're probably on Cavern because I've seen a lot of humans in this deck.
Yeah. They're on Cavern naming human for sure. But unlike Tim McCrom, both commanders are humans, I believe. So yeah.
Crom is a zombie mutant.
Yeah. Sorry, I said unlike Tim McCrom. So Crom's a zombie and Timna's the. I saw Aaron Miller, by the way, at Commandfest this last week. Super cool. I got my Crom signed. I got my Judge Enlightened Tutor signed. He was super nice. Yeah. Maybe I should have told you I was going. I didn't know if I was going. I could have gotten you some stuff signed. But anyway.
I would have mailed you some stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I didn't know I was going to go until later. All
it's
right,
okay.
so
it's okay.
Last up, we have very, very spicy. Well, tell us about it.
Today, we're going to talk about... No, I'm kidding. Not today. We'll talk about this in depth on another episode, probably. But we did see Sefris.
Yes.
The Hidden Ways in a deck called simply Venture Time. Because we are venturing into the dungeon. Sefris has, for Esper, you get a legendary creature, Human Wizard. It's a 2/3. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control are put into your graveyard from anywhere. It's not that you control, it's whenever 1 or more are put into a graveyard from anywhere, you venture into a dungeon. It only triggers once each turn, which makes weird sense that they limited it on that, but it has whenever you complete a dungeon, you can pull a creature out from, I believe, your graveyard to the battlefield. So every time you complete a dungeon, and to be honest, a lot of dungeons, I think you can complete in there's one that has only 4 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can literally complete this in a turn cycle with this deck.
Was it Lost Mines of Phandelver? I think it was.
Yeah. The only reason that matters is this deck runs all the a lot of the cycling creatures. It runs all the cycling creatures that you can that from Lord of the Rings that search out lands.
Mm-hmm.
It runs several creatures that you can channel. This deck is just basically, I'm going to drop this creature into the grave. It's going to come out of the grave. It's going to trigger my dungeon. I am going to gain so much advantage from just drawing a card after discarding a card that discarding the card is negligible. So I'm literally just drawing cards for free at this point. They're on Shieldred. They're on all the good creatures. My God, dude, like I'm like looking at it. They're on all the they're on the evoke creatures. They're on Solitude. They're on Subtlety. They're on Street Wraith. Street Wraith, my man. They're on Harvester of Misery, new card that just came out. They're on, my God, I'm just like looking through this list. They're on Talion. They're on Elish Norn. They're on Razaketh. They're on Void Weaver. They're on Moonshaker Cavalry. Moonshaker Cavalry, guys, is the white Kraken hoof that gives your creatures flyings and +X, where X is the number of creatures in play. And to go along with all these wonderful big creatures, since, you know, obviously their plan does require a turn cycle, they're not on anything too explosive. I mean, I think they're still on Thassa's Oracle, though, if I can trace it back. No, I don't even think they're on Thassa's Oracle.
No, there's not a Thoracle in here.
Which is insane, man.
Yeah.
This deck is insane. But they're on all the stack pieces because this is a slower strategy. So they're like, well, I'm inevitable. So what I'm going to do is slow down everybody. Because guess what? If we're all walking at the same pace, I reach the end goal first.
Yeah, like this is just such a weird deck. I mean, okay, this deck should go to just kind of go to show you there is so much that is still left to do in cEDH. Now, granted, like not every like new strategy is gonna just run around winning every tournament. Like, you know, there's some very established decks that are very hard to beat, but there's still plenty of room to like explore and do new things. Like this took 20th in a very large tournament, right? Like Saltbus was pretty big, and that's not a slouch at all. And this doesn't look like any other cEDH deck. They are on 42 creatures. 42 creatures.
So,
like what?
Here's the best part. Their biggest advantage is the dungeons, non-interactable. You can't interact with those.
No.
Once they have the initiative, you lose. Because the last line of the initiative is you look at the top 10 and put a creature into play with 3 1/1 counters on it.
Yeah, it's really hard to counter. The only way you can't even like counter them back. Like with these things, they're all like, it's kind of like what's that morph thing? Kadena. Where it's all like activated abilities. Like there's Mirror Shell Crab, which is a counter spell that's just a channel ability. You can't interact with that. There's Nimble Obstructionist, which is a cycling ability where it's a stifle, uncounterable stifle, basically on a creature. Like,
my God,
I don't know, man.
Tishana's Timebinder. They're on Phyrexian Censor. They're on White Plume Adventurer. This deck is just, I'm going to cheat these creatures in the only way that you cannot interact with dungeons. Because once I trigger a dungeon, it's triggered. You can't really interact with it. Initiative, you have to attack them to take it away from them. Guess what? This deck runs a lot of creatures, and most decks don't run big enough creatures to get over these ones. So once they have a blocker, you're done. This deck just says, no. We done. I'm just going to inevitably take this over. We're Legacy now. We're taking the initiative and winning this.
And this deck is on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Rule of Law effects. It doesn't... it's not running actual Rule of Law, but it's running Arcane Laboratory, which is basically the same card. And then it's on Archon of Emeria, Eidolon of Rhetoric, and Aethersworn Canonist, and Deafening Silence. Like, if you're going against this person, you are not casting more than one spell a turn. That's just how it's going to be.
It's also on Stony Silence and Null Rod.
Oh, God, yeah. Which is odd to me, because this does run a decent amount of artifacts, but like I guess maybe they're treating it more like rituals, where they're just throwing out their bigger things and then just not caring about them anymore.
Once their commander's out, that's the only ramp they need.
Yeah, and that's kind of reflected in the choice of artifacts we have. We have Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, Mox Diamond, Soul Ring, and Mana Vault, and not a single 2 mana rock.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, interesting.
This is a brutal deck.
Yeah, definitely. If you're at all interested, please check this out. The deck list will be linked below. And with that, I think that is going to wrap up our news section, and we will be moving on to Gyruda, Doom of Depth. All right, we are here with Nybar, the foremost player of Gyruda, Doom of Depths. So let's start off with a quick introduction about yourself. Tell us your name, how long you've been playing, and stuff like that.
Sure. First, some people know me by Nybar, some people know me by Anthony, but I am Nybar, the Gyruda guy. A little bit about myself. I've been playing cEDH for, I think, just over 2 years. I guess I'm going on my 3rd year of playing cEDH. My brother got me into it, and I started playing with bad decks, and I continue to play with bad decks. My first one was Extus for the Mardu, kind of like flip side onto the Blood Avatar kind of shenanigans. And then from there, I went over to Tyam before it was meta. And then after Tyam, I switched over to Gyruda, which has been about almost a year now since I've been playing Gyruda.
Okay. And you are a fellow Texan, I hear, perhaps?
Yes, I am located in the DFW area.
Same. Oh, very cool. Okay. What city? I'm in Plano.
Okay, cool. I'm over in Keller.
Keller, okay.
Yeah,
okay, cool. Very cool.
Yeah, about 20 minutes away from Crimson Lion.
Oh, I might see you on Sunday then if you're playing.
I'll be there Sunday.
Okay,
It'll
cool.
be my first one at Crimson, yeah.
Okay, I'll watch out for you. Anyway, that's getting off track. So why don't you tell us a bit about how you've done with Gyruda in tournaments so far? And it's okay if it's not like winning everything, but how's that gone for you?
So I haven't won any tournaments, but I've gotten a couple of nice results with it. As soon as I built the deck back in May last year, I did a little private Discord tournament, but about 20 or so people, and I ended up top 4ing that one right away, which was really cool. Since then, I had accrued enough points to make it to the Mox Masters Invitational, and then played in their last chance qualifier, top 16 in that, and then played in the Invitational. Just barely missed out top 16 there. My last pod was against Freedom Waffle, Comedian, and Max the Judge. That was a really tough pod to try and get my winning in. And then
I saw that pod.
Yeah. I wish I was in a different pod, but it was really cool getting to play against such great players, though. Definitely a great learning experience.
Max the Judge beat me in the Swiss.
Dang. Yeah, he was playing a really cool deck too.
Really was.
The following month, or I think a month and a half, I played in the Chaos Treasure series in December. So just I guess 5 or 6 months ago from now. And I top 16 that one with Gyruda, which unfortunately is also the same one which the player on Corvold won and then cheated.
Yes.
So no one talked about that tournament, but I did top 16. I didn't run into him, so I didn't get cheated on, which was nice.
Okay.
Yep. And then I think most recently I took Gyruda to Punt City 3. Didn't do the greatest there, but I felt really, I think it was my second or third in-person event with Gyruda. Always really fun to play in-person events in general, but that was a really cool experience playing at Punt City 3 for the 3rd time. I love going there. I'll probably go again next year if it happens.
Cool.
LobbyCon is the greatest.
I love it. Just getting to meet all the people that I've gotten to know over Discord over the past 2 years.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and just hop right into Gyruda. Well, first, we should probably explain what Gyruda actually does for those listening at home on Spotify. So Gyruda Doom of Depths is a 6-mana 6/6, so it's 4, and then it's got hybrid Dimir mana, so it's blue-black, blue-black. You can pay either one for each of those pips. It's a legendary Demon Kraken, and it's actually a companion card So it can be your companion if your deck only has cards with even mana values, but we're not doing that. We are running that as our commander. And then it's ETB. When it enters the battlefield, each player mills 4 cards. Put a creature card with an even mana value from among the milled cards onto the battlefield under your control. So, yeah, let's just hop right in. And why don't you tell us why play this deck? Why play Gyruda in a sea of all these different commanders, all these different Dimir commanders too? What makes Gyruda special and fun for you?
I love playing this deck. It's a ton of fun. If you want to be different than the other Dimir commanders, all the other ones run Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal to win, right? But this deck doesn't do that. It's very different from the Dimir strategy. You're still on Thoughts of Oracle, Tainted Pact, right? So that's kind of the similar thing between the Dimir decks. But it's really fun to just play a big dude and flip into more big dudes, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the Kennen game plan, like the old Kennen strategy, just flipping into big stuff. Lots of fun. It's like you're playing the slot machines, kind of.
Oh, okay. You're a holy player. You're definitely doing the dance as you go through it. You're like, come on, big flip, big flip.
Big flip. And it's great because, again, it's not just your deck that you're flipping through, it's everyone's deck. So getting to hit someone else's Dockside Extortionist or their Consecrated Sphinx or their Tidespout Tyrant definitely happens a little bit more often than you think. It's great.
Oh, man, getting someone's kitten.
Getting someone's kitten. I've had that happen too. Getting someone's Emil is also really nice.
Oh, God. Okay, it looks like Samurai actually cut out on the mic a bit, so it's all good. We'll keep it pushing. So yeah, what is your game plan or general strategy for this deck?
Yeah. So the strategy for the deck's kind of evolved since I built it. When I first built it, it was all about just kind of turboing out Gyruda, and then having just a huge amount of creatures in the deck to flip into, whether that be Tidespout Tyrant, Razaketh, Jin Cataxius, Consecrated Sphinx, all those big baddies that are just kind of like hard to deal with on the board. But that plan kind of petered out, and I saw less results with that plan. And so I kind of changed it to focus more on the kind of clone aspect and the flexibility aspect of the deck. Getting down an advantage engine early, like Mystic, Rhystic, Black Market Connections is a decent one, or even just having some clones in your hand to kind of evolve with the battlefield, right? If there's a Crom on the battlefield, you can clone that, get some card advantage that way. And when you're ready to go for the Gyruda plan, you know you have some cards in hand to back you up when that happens.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I would imagine that's helpful.
Yeah.
So basically, your best creature is your opponent's best creature most of the time?
A lot of times, yeah. I love cloning Docksides. All the time.
Me too. Now, like, we know what your general strategy is. Like, how do you combo / maybe win? Like, because sometimes the combo doesn't win, but I think your combo is going for a win.
Yeah, so there's a good number of combos in the deck. Obviously, we have the Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pact, right? I'm not on Demonic Consultation. This is a personal choice. It could be controversial for some people, but it's usually a dead card, and I don't like to have to use it to exile my deck to find like a Mindbreak Trap or something. I'd rather just have the Mindbreak Trap in hand and not a dead card.
Right.
And so the Thassa's Oracle is not usually the game plan. It's usually more about the flexibility and kind of evolving with the battlefield and getting the card advantage. But other combos in the deck, we also run Tidespout Tyrant. That's a very simple one. You flip into Tidespout Tyrant. You have some rocks on the battlefield that you can bounce back and forth to generate infinite mana. Once you have that infinite mana, you play the rock, bounce Gyruda if it's on the battlefield, or play Gyruda, and then you can continually do that with Gyruda and the mana rock, milling yourself, milling your opponents until you land on the Thassa's Oracle with your own empty library. Usually with that plan, I don't ever have to pass the turn. I can usually get someone else's Thassa's Oracle or my own, and then continue to do that loop, and then play a clone of Thassa's Oracle if it's not the right time.
Okay.
Not to mention, because you are running Tidespout, you know, like you can always bounce your Thassas if it comes down to it. But I think
Correct.
Tidespout also hits lands.
Tidespout Tyrant does hit any target permanent, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you run clones, so you can get to that critical mass of just bouncing everything back to people's hands if you need to. If you kind of like whiffed on it, you can just literally go like, okay, so I have infinite mana, I have clones. I can try to go for a mill, but like maybe like there's a reason it didn't work because maybe your thing's already engraved or something. No, because like your commander should work. Like yeah, like there's no reason you should ever whiff in your deck, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's not really any way to, like, with the Tidespout Tyrant combo whiff per se, because I'm also not only am I making use of my entire deck whenever I'm going through this milling process, I'm making use of everyone else's deck. So I'm also stealing any creatures that I see a value from those piles as well.
You're also milling them, so like you could, if it comes down to it, you can always just say and pass.
Yeah. So exactly. So if it somehow for some reason doesn't work out that I can't just win on the spot, I can just pass the turn. But typically I don't have to.
Question about this ability. So it says put a creature card with an even mana value. If you get like some sort of creature, and I know this is probably rare, but if you hit a creature that is somehow detrimental, and that's the only creature that's there, do you have to put that on the battlefield? Do you know?
Yes, I do have to pick one creature.
Mm-hmm.
So if for some reason, like an Aethersworn Canvas was the Containment Priest was the only thing I could take, then that would be not great for me. I haven't had that happen to me yet, where I've had to take a detrimental creature for myself. There's not too many out there. Like Containment Priest isn't super widely played at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Usually any stacked pieces like Drannith or Dothi, I can take with no problem. I wouldn't mind having control of that.
Right.
But yeah,
it works through pieces, like an exile effect, right? Like rest in peace.
Correct. Yeah. So it makes the combos a little bit harder, but I still get the creature through the exile effect because of the way that Gyruda reads. Right. It's from among the milled cards. I've had that come up in a couple of tournaments where I've had to actually have the judge give me the wrong ruling and then ask them to, or like repeal with the head judge, because it's actually on the rulings for Gyruda that it can just grab them from exile, because it doesn't care where it's going. It just cares that it was milled in the first place.
Nutty.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've definitely gotten some people with that before where they play their Dothi. I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to keep going.
Cool.
Yeah.
Next.
Why don't you talk to us a bit about, because I'm not really sure where else we would bring this up, but talk to us about how this kind of works. So you play Gyruda, let's say you mill one of your clones. Talk to us about what happens after that.
Yeah, typically a clone off of Gyruda, I'll make it into a copy of Gyruda if there's nothing else better on the field, right? If I don't want to clone anything else, then it'll come into play as a copy of Gyruda. The legend rule will take effect. I'll still get the ETB trigger, but the clone, or I can have Gyruda, one or the other, go and sack itself to the legend rule. But I'll still get that ETB effect from the clone entering.
Right.
And so I'll get another 4 cards from my library, and then another 4 from each of my opponent's libraries. So 16 cards in total seen every time I flip.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
So like, let's say you start hitting like multiple clones. At what point do you like, is there a point where you're just hitting clone after clone after clone and you kind of want to like pump the brakes a little bit? Like maybe you mill over your Thoracle, or do you just, every time you hit a clone, you almost always take the clone if there's just not other good options in the milled cards?
Yeah, so usually I try to take as much time to prep my casting of Gyruda to ensure that I can get the most amount of flips to win the game. So I don't usually want to try and blindly cast Gyruda. And if I do, I'm usually not doing so hot. I usually have to have something set up like a Displacer Kitten or a Roaming Throne in place to kind of help facilitate the flips, right?
Right.
At what point would I stop flipping with Gyruda is when I feel like the risk is too high that I'm not going to be flipping anything either into a direct win or anything super valuable. I'll usually try and pick something valuable either from among the cards that I've milled between myself and my opponents.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that
Okay,
makes
so
sense.
like a dockside
We're-
or something of that nature. Something's going to give me a lot more value than just getting another flip.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I see your deck is like the way you're playing it. I've seen people play Gyruda since it came out. It's a fun card. Other people play Gyruda like it's a roulette, where they're like betting like on one or two options. You're more like playing it like it's blackjack, where you're like changing the numbers to be in your favor. It's a slimmer edge, but it's still your edge.
Exactly, yeah. When I started the deck, I definitely had a much higher density of creatures. Right now, the deck's only on 24. And I think when I started, I was over 30. I had a few more clones and a few more heavy hitters, right? I had Razaketh and Jin Cataxius, all those other ones I mentioned before, which are really good hits off of Gyruda and can definitely change the shape of the game. But I found that plan of just flipping into a big, heavy creature and then passing the turn didn't usually result in me winning the game.
Right.
So now that I've slimmed down the creature package, I've kind of changed the strategy so that when I do go for the Gyruda flips, I can usually do more than one flip at a time.
So these clones aren't
Okay.
necessarily so that you can keep hitting more clones. They're there so that when you do hit more clones, you get more looks at what your opponents are getting, and then maybe you flip into a Tidespout Tyrant.
Yeah, so that's the great part about the deck, right? I can look at what my opponent's decks have, what creatures I can get from them, or I can continue with my game plan and try to combo out with the Tidespout, or Displacer Kitten, or like Deadeye Navigator and that sort of thing.
Right. Okay.
So we know what your early game plan is. It's to get out an advantage engine. Your mid game plan is to kind of start arranging your cards, and your late game plan is to flip the deck, basically.
Yeah.
And it's by late game you have stacked the numbers in your favor that it's very deterministic what's going to happen.
Yeah, you pretty much summed it up in a nutshell right there.
Very good. Okay.
But
cool.
my question is, so like I'm looking at this, your late game, like what are like the strengths of this? Like how are you like making this better in your advantage? Like over like say like I'm gonna go with a normal Dimir deck. Like let's look at like
Italian.
There we go. Talion is a control deck where he will just accrue more and more advantages. How are you stacking up your advantages in a nice way?
Yeah, I'm not going to say that this deck
comparative.
is. Yeah, I'm not going to say that this deck is better than Talion. I think Talion's doing better numbers than Gyruda, right? But I do think that at any point in the game, because we are in such a heavy creature meta, creatures right now are very good comparatively to a few years ago.
Yeah.
And just being
Agreed.
able to say, hey, I want the best creature on the battlefield at pretty much any point in the game to give me value, I think is a very strong point of this deck.
That's very true. Yeah. So when you're milling through clones, you don't ever have to pick Gyruda. You can, and that'll keep giving you stuff. But yeah, if there's like a Tivit on the board, or an Atraxa, or a Dockside, or maybe a Ranger Captain.
Italian.
Huh?
Italian.
Or Italian. Yeah, definitely. Just
Children.
This deck is just consistently getting the best thing on the board, no matter what it is.
My first game, first round at Punt City 3, so I was playing against Italian deck. They played Shieldred, and I had cloned their Shieldred twice. Unfortunately, that didn't make the other two players very happy, and that's part of the reason why I didn't win that game, because I ended up making enemies of the entire table. But being able to clone Shieldred twice was really awesome.
Yeah.
People are like paying 6 life for one card.
Yep. Yeah, at one
It
point there
seems
were
like a great rate.
yeah, three shield druids at once on the field, and but yeah, that got the ire of the other two players against me.
I don't know why.
But like you said, yeah, cloning Tibbets, Atraxas, these big heavy creatures that are out there right now in the meta that
Mhm.
provide so much value. I don't have to clone Gyruda. I can get the Tibbet, and then I can get the Atraxa C10 cards, right? I can clone a Niv Mizzet. Niv Mizzet's out there somewhat fairly often now.
Yes.
And just accrue value that way. Clone Talions, clone Croms. I love cloning Croms.
Ooh. You clone
Crom's good.
Tiems lately?
I'm sorry?
Have you cloned a Tiem?
I actually have not seen a time for a very long time, and I hope that it stays that way.
I'm gonna tell you a hidden technique with the Tiem.
Yeah.
If there's a Tiem and a dockside out, you get a flesh duplicate and you win.
Ooh, do tell me more about that.
Because you just keep removing. If you can clone the Tiem and you have the flesh duplicate enter as a dockside, you can remove the 3 counters from it over and over again.
Oh, that is so sick. Okay, so then you go through your entire library, milling 3 cards, just bringing back the flesh duplicate over and over again, copying dockside. You have the mana. I see that. That's dope. And then at the end, just bring back the Oracle.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's sick. All right, I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'm gonna keep that in mind for whenever I see a Tiem and a dockside on the field at the same time.
I've been running Breach Lines for so long that I saw a Tiem and I was like, I have 2 clones in hand. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Breach.
All right, I'll have to add that to the primer for the deck.
This is why you're not seeing Tiems. This is a clone meta, and Tiem is surprisingly better in non-Tiem decks.
Yeah,
Like,
that's funny.
I think something that people are realizing, it's like Atraxa. Atraxa is better in non-Atraxa decks.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
real good.
It's like, but what I'm noticing is because your commander is basically abusing the fact that creatures are getting better and better, your commander's actually got a fairly high ceiling and will be consistently on the rise as we go through these. It's like an artifact commander. Like, in all honesty, they're always going to print better artifacts. We know this. It's just how it works. They're always going to print better creatures. So your commander being a steal the creature commander means that it's always going to get better. But here's my question.
Mhm.
What are the weaknesses? Like, what's that moment that you just go like, okay, so like, we're not winning this game because we're not winning this game. What are the cards that make you just go, done, we're done. We're next game.
Yeah. The cards that I really hate seeing are Grafdigger's Cage, Weathered Runestone, and Bloodchief Ascension.
Yeah.
Those cards are the bane of this deck, and just so happens there's a deck that plays all 3 of them sometimes, and that's Talion. So coming up against Talion decks can be a bit of a problem. Because it does play all.
And I was like, oh, it's Bloodchief.
Yeah, it's kind of rough.
Have you considered playing Bloodchief's Ascension yourself? I mean, you are milling them a lot, right?
I do have it in my sideboard. The only issue is that I don't have a consistent way of proccing the Bloodchief Ascension myself, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Talion has a very inherent way of, right, you play the card, they take two life, and you draw a card. Bloodchief Ascension gets a counter at the end step, right? With Gyruda, like, I can punch someone for 6 on my turn, but then I'm tapped out, and then people just swing at me because I have the Bloodchief Ascension. So it's not really good play pattern for this deck to be playing that. It would be good if I had a more consistent way to proc it and get it online, and then I could start doing the Gyruda thing, and then everyone's taking 8 damage per flip, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Poor guy.
So yeah, you don't want to see Grafdigger's Cage. You don't want to see these sax pieces. What other weaknesses do you tend to run into? Like, what are some like fairly common game situations that you run into besides those stacks pieces where you're kind of playing and you're kind of getting maybe out-tempoed, outvalued, or maybe there's a deck that's able to like consistently go under you? And I know Talion hurts because it has all of those, it runs all of those very, very detrimental cards to your deck. But yeah, what else are we looking at here?
Yeah, I would say that this deck is probably more mid-range focused. It's not
Mhm.
super turbo. Every once in a blue moon, I can get it like a turn 2 or turn 3 Gyruda and just like hit the nuts, right? But that's very few and far in between. So it's not very turbo. I would say the turbo decks have an edge on this deck. If I'm
Right.
not mulling for interaction, I'd much rather have my Mystic Remora or get Italian out some sort of advantage engine or maybe some clones to kind of be flexible throughout the game. But a turbo deck can definitely steal a win out from underneath Gyruda for sure.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I was thinking that, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were on it. So yeah, so if you're like against a Rog side, it might be difficult for this deck to deal with sometimes if you don't have
Yeah,
like free counter magic.
exactly. Yeah, Rockside decks tend to, pull out the turn 2 or turn 3 win, and that's when I'm just getting set up. And turn 4, turn 5 is like when I typically like to kind of go off with Gyruda.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So if there was a new player, maybe not new to Magic, but just new to this deck, are there any
Mhm.
tips you would like to give people that are watching or listening and are inspired and want to give the old demon Kraken a whirl? What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Um, my tips would be to try not to just ram out Gyruda onto an empty board, or if you don't have a way to continually proc its ability, right? Um, that will maybe give you, in some games, a lucky flip into something that's good. Other times you'll probably peter out and you won't have any backup for the rest of the game. You'll just be top decking. So mulligans are very important for this deck. I would try to mulligan for an early Rhystic Study, an early Mystic Remora. Black Market Connections is pretty good in the deck. One Ring. Anything's going to give you more cards throughout the game so that by turns 4, 5, and 6, you can play your Gyruda and you're able to trigger its ability multiple times that turn.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can't
Well,
mulligan for those and you're going really low, I would keep a hand that has the ability to play out a clone or two by turns 2 or 3.
Okay.
oh, I'd like to also give a tip to players. The mirror match, get your Gyruda out first.
Yes. Yeah, if you see another Gyruda out there, you get yours out first. You turbo that bitch
I was
out.
just I was distinctly in a game with you and another Gyruda deck. I do remember that.
Oh, that's right. We were playing with what was it? Dead on Board.
Dead on board. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Like, I was like, oh, mirror match. And I'm like, no, please, no, come
Yep.
on.
Yep.
It's like,
The first one to play Garuda won that game. Spoiler.
Why
yeah.
is that exactly?
There's two decks with
Doubled your clones.
a high density of clones in both decks, so you're never missing
I see.
a hit. Yeah.
Okay.
You're never
that makes
missing
sense.
a hit. You've got double Wandering Thrones available to you. You've got double Tide Sprout now.
Yeah.
It's like, it was the worst. It was legit like, yeah, his chance of failure went down from like 1 in 25 to like 1 in 7.
Yeah.
Like 1 in 7.25 like percent. It was like, Jesus, like he was like a 7.25% of failure, whereas before he was at a 25% failure. So
Yeah.
it's like 1 in 4 chance of failing versus 1 in like 16.
Yeah.
It
This
was
is pretty
brutal.
crazy.
It was very brutal.
Yeah. If this deck ever gets popular enough that there's
Um,
mirror matches, you get your Garuda out first.
Yeah, don't focus on the advantage engine. Focus on the Jeweled Lotus. Like more for the
Get the Jewel
first
Lotus.
Gyruda.
Yeah.
It's like, what's in the hand? Mana Crypt, Land, Jeweled Lotus. You mold down to 3, yeah, but you've got Gyruda too, so
Mhm.
help a man out.
I would be.
What are like some trick plays?
I'm sorry.
What's a trick play for you? Like I know some decks like I know some trick plays for like Malcolm Kedis. I know Ganesh knows some trick plays for Blue Farm. What's a trick play in your deck that you can pop out that people wouldn't expect?
Well, I would be remiss in not mentioning a very convoluted combo in the deck that is kind of like a trick play, and that's revolving around the card Ruthless Technomancer.
Hmm.
This is the one I never understood.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite
Thank you so
cards.
much.
If I'm ever introduced like a football player to like a crowd of Magic players and they're like, "What's your favorite card?" It's Ruthless Technomancer every time. I love this card. So for 3 and a black, you get a
So
human
good.
wizard, 2/4, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature you control. If you do, create a number of treasure tokens equal to that creature's power. And it has a second ability. You pay 2 and a black and sacrifice X artifacts. Return target creature card with power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. X can't be 0. The really nice thing about this deck is that most of our creatures that are in the graveyard are going to be clones that we sack to Legend Rule, and their power in general is going to be 0.
Mm-hmm.
So all we need to bring them back is 3 mana and 1 artifact. So if we can sacrifice a clone of Gyruda that stays on the field, something like Spark Double or Auton Soldier, get 6 treasures, we can use 4 of those treasures to bring back that clone and get another Gyruda ETB.
Right. Okay. Okay, I see.
It's a really cool card. Now the combo involves multiple pieces, and it needs Gyruda. It needs a clone like Auton Soldier or Spark Double of Gyruda, Ruthless Technomancer, and Deadeye Navigator. This actually happens to be the most common way that I win. It's just usually the way that it's set up is that I can get those multiple flips of Gyruda when I finally cast them, and then I can kind of land into these cards as I'm flipping through the deck.
Right.
And then once I have those cards out, the combo basically consists of Ruthless Technomancer coming in, sacking the Auton Soldier or Spark Double. I'm getting 6 treasures by sacking Auton Soldier, 7 treasures with Spark Double because it enters with a +1/+1 counter. And so those will go to the graveyard. Usually I'll have Deadeye Navigator paired with the Ruthless Technomancer. And so we'll use the Ruthless Technomancer's ability to bring back the clone as a copy of Gyruda, continue the milling process, and then with the extra treasures, use the 1 and a blue ability given to Ruthless Technomancer through the Soul Bond to exile it, bring it back, sacrifice that clone again, make the treasures, and repeat.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings us to
only cost you 6.
Yeah, total of 6
pretty
mana.
easy.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that kind of brings us into our next point, which is: are there any cards in here you feel are underrated? Like maybe someone looking through your list might not get how good it actually is. So Ruthless Technomancer is actually a great example. But what else in here has maybe kind of surprised you as to how good it actually was in practice?
Yeah, I can probably
people have ignored it.
Yeah, I got 2 examples. I'll have people who will ask me questions on my Moxfield list and say, why is this in the deck? How is this possibly good in here? And one of those cards is Massacre Worm. I love being able to play Massacre Worm in a cEDH deck so much. It's so great. And what people...
You're a terrible person.
What people don't realize is that when you have Massacre Worm, it's great as a board wipe, right? 3 and triple black, when it enters, you -2/-2 everything of your opponent's board, and whenever those things die, they lose 2 life. Now, if I have a second Massacre Worm, or a third Massacre Worm, or a 4th one, that's when they're losing, 4, 6, or 8 life per creature when they die. I've definitely killed opponents with just Massacre Worms before.
Wow.
Yeah, they need pills.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I said they need pills for those worms.
I need pills for those worms. Yeah, exactly. I will never take out this card from this deck. It is so good, especially when it can be removal when you need it to be as well. It's great. That's my first example of a card that's kind of like a hidden gem. My second one is Spectral Arcanist, which is another card I think people probably have not heard of before. Spectral Arcanist is a 3 and a blue for a Spirit Wizard 3/2 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to the number of spirits you control from a graveyard without paying its mana cost. And if it would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. But the key part of this text is that it's from any graveyard. Usually when you put this into play, it's going to be the only spirit. However, I do have other spirits just by chance in the deck, Mirror Hall Mimic being one and Deadeye Navigator being the third in the deck. But usually it's just Spectral Arcanist. So you'll get to hit an instant or sorcery spell from someone's graveyard for 1 mana value. Which in our format, there is a tremendous amount of great cards at 1 mana value, namely tutors. And so I can, at any point in the game, just have this as a tutor ability. There's also some good removal options, like the Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile and such. But it's got
Silence.
Silence is a great one, exactly. So it's got some great utility on a creature if I need to buy back a spell from my graveyard or from someone else's graveyard. It also has some synergy with Displacer Kitten, because anytime you cast those spells, you get a Displacer Kitten flicker. And so you can kind of get some more value from that. If there happens to be another copy of Displacer Kitten on the field, you actually can loop that ability over and over again while also milling with Gyruda.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So those are my 2 picks for my hidden gems in the deck, cards that people might kind of scoff at or might not know exactly what's going on, why it's in the deck.
Okay. All right, so
They're scoffing. They're not scoffing for long.
They're not scoffing for long.
No, yeah. You imagine once they take 8 off Massacre Worms, they're not very heavy. So yeah, let's go card by card. Now we're not going to go over in depth every single card, but we're gonna just kind of run through them real quick. So we got Dothy. Makes sense. You've got a graveyard hate piece for those pesky other graveyard decks, perhaps, and gives you a free cast or something. Flush, what's up?
It also does not interfere with the Gyruda mill plan.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So this will also be like the Rest in Peace effect, right? Nybar, where it's like it'll go to exile with a void counter on it, and then you'll just bring it into play.
Yeah, I had a situation at Punt City 3 in my round 6 game where I had Dothy on the field, and all of my opponents were like, he has mana for Gyruda next turn, so we need to get rid of that Dothy. And that kind of panicked a player to remove it at sorcery speed, which ended up losing me the game and losing everyone else the game as well to the Ojutai Zergo player.
Was that Dracomancer?
Yeah, we played against each other in round 6, and he won the game because my Dothy got removed during the Kinnon's turn when they could have done it at his end step. I should have been a yapper and kind of fought for leaving the Dothy for at least until the end of his end step, because he ended up winning with a breach line at the end.
Oh, yikes.
Yep.
Okay.
Gotta fight for your Dothy's rights to party.
But yeah, Dothy's a great card, especially when Gyruda comes out. If it is allowed to stay out, right? If people don't remove the Dothy. And when I play it, not only do I get to pick a creature with Gyruda's ability, but then I also get 12 cards of my opponent's under Dothy, which is really nice. So a lot of disruption, a lot of flexibility with Dothy at that point.
Right. Okay. Cool. So yeah, Dothy, good card. Even better in this deck because we're milling our opponents. Flesh Duplicate, Clone. Gilded Drake is just something I see in a lot of Demir lists. I imagine it's just good.
It's a good card. I don't think I take it out. If I do ever take it out, it'll be for another clone. But I like the ability to take away someone's creature and not just clone it. Because I would assume that their decks are going to use that creature better than me, but I'd rather have it than they have it.
Yeah, it's like if you take away like a Sissy or a Kinnan, that can really throw a wrench in things.
Yeah.
Also, Most players have cut Gilded Drake because they don't want people cloning it and taking their commander. It doesn't matter if you control your commander or not.
Yeah,
It
you
does
have
not.
enough clones where it doesn't.
Yeah, the whole game plan is to clone it.
Yeah,
So-
it doesn't matter.
so-
yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say I could probably take it out, but not enough people play it. And so I want to play it so that way I can continually Gilded Drake other people's stuff throughout the game if I need to.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So next up we have Fimage, which is another clone. So we'll just kind of go past it. Thought Thoracle makes sense for Demir. Clever Impersonator. This card's actually just really good in general, right? Like
It's a really flexible clone. It's probably one
Yeah.
of my favorites.
One of the best clones. People aren't playing this card enough.
They're not, because this could be a Ristic Study if you need it to be, or
Yeah.
a One Ring, right? It's
It
really
could be
good.
your smothering type.
It can be a Smothering Tithe. I would love a Smothering Tithe in this deck.
Like, as a person that doesn't run white normally, I would love a smothering tithe, wizards. Can I take some? Can I have someone smothering tithe, please?
Exactly.
This could be your Trouble in Paris. This can be just the best value engine that you have. This can be a land that you need. Like, guess what? Gaia's Cradle is actually okay in Demir.
Well, so
well, it's
Clever
non-land.
Impersonator does say non-land permanent. So any permanent on
it
the
says
battlefield,
non-land?
that's not a land. Yeah.
yeah.
Is there one that does lands? There probably is.
Yeah,
but
probably.
this can be just some of the best cards in the game
Yeah,
for so cheap,
for
Or
sure.
free for you.
All right, and then we have
Hmm.
Clone, which is a clone.
It's namesake. It's just a clone. Yep. Can't run a clone deck without clone.
Yeah, it's
I
good.
was
Very
so
good.
hoping you were going to say it exactly like that too. I was like, come on, just say it's a clone.
Yep.
All right. Then Displacer Kitten's up next.
You got the DK.
Yeah.
Yep. Displacer Kitten, just a really good value piece in the deck. Another way to set up before you go off with Gyruda. Usually flipping into Displacer Kitten as it feels bad because sometimes I don't have enough pieces in hand to trigger the Displacer Kitten.
Right.
After having to spend all my resources to get to the point of casting Gyruda. But being able to play it first and then play Gyruda later does usually result in me having 2 to 3, maybe 4 flips when I play Gyruda.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And especially it has like some synergy with this Spectral Arcanist we saw earlier. So if you like have a kit now and you flip into this, then you get another instant or sorcery you get to cast, which will flicker. Actually, this is like a mini combo right here. I just realized you're gonna get every single 1-drop or 0-drop in graveyards that are instant sorceries if these two cards are on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, and then when you even better when you finish the chain, you still have that last flicker, and then you can flicker Gyruda and get something else.
Yep.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next up is Gigantoplasm. So this is a clone, but it also is like it can sack itself, which I don't know how often that comes up.
Very rarely, but I do like to have clones that have different abilities. This one can be interesting, especially when I need to bring back a clone from the grave. Say I have Ruthless Technomancer out, or if I have a Reanimate in hand and I need another clone ability, I can sack it, put it in the graveyard, and then bring it back out to have an ETB effect.
Okay.
Or in other niche cases, if I've made it into a clone of Bowmasters and someone else tries to Bowmaster it, I can make its power higher in response.
Oh,
Or
right.
Power and
Or
toughness
if
higher.
someone tries to clone your clone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like if you're tapped out and you don't have that option, someone's trying to clone your Bowmaster, you can just pay 0, make it a 0/0, and just take it off the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Very, very cool. And for those listening at home, I should probably mention Gigantoplasm's a 4-mana 0/0 with you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it has pay X mana and the creature has base power and toughness XX. So you can make that 0, you can make that 10, whatever. All right. So next up we have Mirror Hall Mimic, which this is another clone, 4-mana 0/0. You can have it be any creature except as a spirit also. But then this also has a disturb cost. This is kind of interesting. Talk to us a little bit about ghostly mimicry, which is the backside of this card.
Yeah, so this is just really nice if for whatever reason you don't have more clones in hand or an ability to trigger Gyruda's ability again. You do have the option to disturb it, make it an aura attached to Gyruda, and every upkeep you'll get a copy of Gyruda through that effect. So
yeah,
just a stable, it's slow, but if you don't have any other options, it's there.
Yeah. So yeah, you disturb it, you pay 5 mana. Once this Mirror Hall Mimic's in the graveyard, you get this nifty little enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of the enchanted creature, and it comes back as an enchantment aura. So very cool. Metamorph, clone, roaming throne.
Yep. Roaming throne. What can I say? There's I think two decks that really love having this card in the deck, and that's Magda and Gyruda. When you play it, you're gonna name Kraken. When I used to have Razaketh in there, I would say Demon, but I don't think that really mattered. But it is Kraken whenever it comes into play. It's 4 mana for 4/4 with Ward 2, which is really nice. Because if I am playing Roaming Throne as a setup piece and then the following turn playing Gyruda, most of the time people can't even remove it because of that Ward 2 cost, which is really nice. When it enters the battlefield, choose creature type. And again, we're choosing Kraken, and it is a Kraken in addition to those other types. And if a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So every time we play Gyruda, we're getting 2 flips. We're going to see 8 cards from my library, 8 cards from, I think 8, 16, 24 cards from everyone else.
Yeah.
Usually we're not whiffing when we're seeing that many cards. This, I would say, is pretty much a combo. It's not 100% guaranteed because you do need to go through the flips, but more than likely you're just going to, as soon as you hit one other clone, you're going to add 2 more flips to that. And so it will just start to just get out of control as you flip through your deck.
Okay. So
honestly,
next up,
one of the best cards in the deck is Technomancer.
Yeah. Ruthless Technomancer. We did a bit of talking about that already.
Yeah, we're good on that one. Sakashima, 1,000 bases.
So just another way to have clones of Gyruda, but clones of Gyruda that stay on the battlefield. And so not only am I getting the ETB effects, but now I'm also getting the 6/6 bodies, which is very relevant if I need to start pointing damage at players through combat.
You don't need to do all that.
I like having options. What can I say?
All right. Oh wait, and then we have the other Sakashima too. Okay, but so
we got both Sakashimas. This one operates differently than the other one because this one enters as a copy of Gyruda, but its name is still Sakashima the Imposter. And so if I were to clone either one of those, that clone would still die. It's a very, very interesting interaction. It does have a neat ability at the bottom where you pay 2 and 2 blue to, at the end of the turn, return it back to your hand. And so you can have a repeatable, basically, clone of Gyruda. It's, again, also slow, but it's that option if you kind of run out of gas and you need to trigger Gyruda again somehow.
Right.
I've also, in only one game where the game had gone on a little too long, but people were on low resources, and I had a bunch of mana on the field, I would clone a Gilded Drake that was on the field with Sakashima, and in response to the Gilded Drake trigger, pay the 2 and 2 blue to have it return to my hand at the end of the turn. And so I would take someone's creature, they'd get my Sakashima Gilded Drake, but at the end of turn, it would return back to my hand. So they wouldn't even have the Gilded Drake.
That's dirty.
Yeah. And so you can just do that over and over again with it.
Yeah. Okay. So next up we have Spark Double, which is a lot like Sakashima the 1,000 Faces. It's basically just making non-legendary clone. Spectral Arcanist we talked about already. Sun Double, pretty standard clone. 4 mana 0/0. Enter as a copy of anything, but it has flash, which is just good overall.
Yeah, the flash is not irrelevant. Especially in this meta where there's a lot of Dauntless Dismantler, Blind Obedience, Manglehorn going around, and someone plays a dockside, and you have the option to then copy that dockside on their end step, so you get the treasures untapped on your turn, which is really nice.
Right. Yeah, that's really good.
Or
Italian,
the option to... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the option to also clone a Thought of the Oracle
Yes.
at instant speed, which is really nice.
Baby. Yes, that is really good. Someone's setting up for their turn, and then you trying to go off with Oracle, you just flash this bad boy in. So Italian, we don't really need to talk about. It's just a good draw engine, right? In our colors. Okay. Samurai, why don't you take this one? What do you think of Vizier of Many Faces?
It's kind of a new concept in this deck. It's a 4-drop clone. I know. It's a 4-drop clone with Embalm, which Embalm makes I believe Embalm makes a copy of the creature. If it was Eternal, it would make a 4/4. This makes a white zombie clone of the creature for 3 and 2 blue. This is great because Engrave, this means you don't necessarily have to bring it back with Gyruda if there's another clone option, because you can always just Embalm it if you need to. Basically, it's a great backup to this. As far as like clones go, though, it's a shapeshifter cleric. So weird that's a cleric.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking about, but it is Amonkhet. Little different there, I guess.
Amonkhet was weird.
But it is a Vizier.
We
so
got
like
the
some sort of
Auton
priest thing.
Oh, true. Yeah, it is a Vizier. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It should be a Vizier. If it's a Vizier, it should be an advisor, not a cleric. It's so weird that they went with cleric. Because we have the advisor creature type. You know?
I don't know. Honestly, don't know. I don't know enough about like that's Egyptian stuff to say for sure what should be going on there.
I'm not an expert on the lore, so don't ask me about the lore.
Yeah, I don't really know either.
It's a clone. That's all I need to know.
Speaking of things that are lore, Auton Soldier is not an MTG lore, but it's got Doctor Who lore.
Where are you going with this?
Yeah, some Doctor Who lore, yeah.
So this card, we actually just the other week interviewed Dracomancer, and he was running this card in Zergo and Ojutai, and it was apparently did work in that deck because it like quadruples your triggers the way it works. So for those that don't know, Auton Soldier is a 6 mana, so 4 and 2 blue artifact creature alien soldier. It's a 0/0. And you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it is not legendary. It's an artifact in addition to its other types, and it has Myriad. So that is whenever it attacks, you create a copy for each other defending player, correct?
Correct.
Or is it every player?
It'll be each other defending player. So it has to attack player, and then any player that it's not attacking will make a copy for that other player.
You basically get 2 extra every time you attack. Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Pretty good. If you can imagine what it does for Zergo Ojutai, imagine what it can do for Gyruda.
Yeah, and you keep this Gyruda too, so it's like, oh my god, like I can imagine like you get this bad boy on the board, and then like if it sticks, the players at the other end of the table are so screwed because like it's going to attack. It's going to make 2 more that are each also going to trigger that can also enter as a copy of this non-legendary Gyruda and just stay. And like it's probably not that difficult to end up getting like 20-30 power on the board if this thing just goes under the radar.
Yeah, this card is really nice because not only does it copy the Gyruda, so I'm getting some big 6/6s attacking people, pressuring life totals, but then I'm also with the Myriad trigger, getting 2 ETB triggers of Gyruda, and I'm seeing 8 cards off the top and 24 of my opponents. So that's a really nice ability to have on just one clone.
Okay.
What also makes this really good is if you like combine it with like Massacre Worm, directly below it on the list.
I have done that before. If you all know Shawnee, Jamaican dude, I had back-to-back tournaments with him with Massacre Worm. He hates this. He hates Massacre Worm now. But in my second tournament, Auton soldiered the Massacre Worm and killed him on that combat because he had 4 creatures out, and all 4 of those creatures died, and he took 32 damage on the spot.
Oh no!
I love you, Shawnee.
Oh no! Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great card. But yeah, it was also great in that Zergo Ojutai deck. That kind of caught us off guard, like totally. Like we were doing the math, we did the math incorrectly. I probably should have asked like a judge to see what the interaction was, because I was very confused at how it worked. And then when it happened and he explained it, I was like, oh, because each dragon triggers off of every dragon. So he saw 36 cards, got to pick the best 12 cards out of 36. That was such a cool play. If he had not won that turn, I had a copy of his Zergo Ojutai on my board, and I had an Auton Soldier in my hand, and I would have loved to do that on my turn.
Yeah. We were just talking to him about that last week, and it sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a really cool game. I unfortunately had to drop after that, but that was a really cool last game to go off on.
Yeah.
Begun the Clone Wars ended.
Yep.
Obviously, we have Deadeye Navigator.
Just a good combo piece.
Massacre Worm and Tide Sprout. If you have the only surprising thing there is Massacre Worm in a CEDH deck. We've already gone over this, but if you don't know what Deadeye Navigator does in CEDH, just know that you do need to kill this. Same with Tide Spout. These are not okay cards. They have never been played fair in this entire format.
Right.
Just kill them. I can't stress that enough.
Don't listen to people.
Your sorceries.
Yeah, don't listen to people that are like, "Oh, it's interaction." No, just get it off the board, bro.
This is a value Tide Spout.
Yeah. One nice little trick with Deadeye Navigator that I've done before, where I played Gyruda and then milled somebody's dockside off of their library, took their dockside, used the treasures to play Deadeye Navigator, paired it with the dockside, and if you read the ability, the one in a blue, exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. Even if it belongs to somebody else, I'd still return it to my side of the field, which is a really nice little trick.
Oh, if you Drake someone's thing and you just interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess for those listening, if for somehow you haven't played against the Deadeye Navigator, I guess it's not super common in our meta nowadays, but like,
not really.
If you play high power,
this is one of the OG boogeymen.
Yeah, like if you played CEDH way back in the day, or like high power way back in the day, or I'm sure this card sees a lot of play in high power decks even now. It's just good overall. The only problem is it has a higher mana cost. It's a 6 mana 5/5.
This card has always been the boogeyman.
Yeah, I guess I don't really need to explain exactly how it works, but basically, you pair it, you soul bond it with another creature. So when either of those ETBs, you just pick a creature and then they're paired. You don't have to target or anything. And then Deadeye Navigator and that other creature has pay 1 and a blue, exile the creature, and then bring it back to the battlefield under your control. So as you can imagine, this is really, really good with any sort of ETB effect. This goes infinite most of the time with Dockside Extortionist. This is, of course, really good with the Gyruda even, right? Because you just you don't mind paying 1 and a blue in the late game to just get another go, right?
Yeah. Even if there's no Dockside and I'm not making infinite mana, and just being able to use, like, if it's in the late game, right? I have 6, 7, 8 mana laying around, and just being able to flicker Gyruda, 3 or 4 times is usually good enough.
Yeah, because it's what's so great about this too is that it's an instant speed. So you let the turns pass. You wait until the player to your right's end step. So right before it gets your turn, and then you go, okay, I'm going to use Deadeye Navigator 4 times, and then you get like 4 more creatures or what have you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we talked about how good Massacre Worm is and Tidespout. And... Yeah, go ahead.
Deadeye was like one of the cards that people would, even before Dockside got printed, people asked for bans on this card. They would always ask for bans on Deadeye Navigator. So, guys, just kill this card. This is not an okay card to resolve.
Well, they printed Emil, which is like better in like almost every regard.
No, not even as good. It's still not as good as Deadeye.
You think so? Yeah,
I mean, the only reason Emil is played in more is because it can go into green decks, and they don't have as many options.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's a legendary.
I feel like I would still probably play Emil over this, just because like the total cost to get the combo started for Emil is 7, and the total cost for Deadeye is 8. So just off of mana efficiency alone, it's a little bit better, but. Then again, if you're blinking things multiple times and you're not winning the game, like with Dockside, I can see Deadeye Navigator being a little better because its ability is only 2 instead of 3.
Yeah. And in the green decks, it's easier to get Emil 2 off of something like Finale or Eldritch Evolution than it is to get Deadeye.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so sorcery, you have a pretty small sorcery suite. So we only have 4. Aim Seal, Reanimate, Detutor, and Toxic Deluge. Yeah, I guess this makes sense. You're not going to want to be on Diabolic Intent. Your curve is so high that it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. You don't really, for one, your commander is 6 mana, and for 2, a lot of these clones are going to be sacking to the legend rule, so like you don't often have just fodder, right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to keep the sorcery package to a minimum. I'd rather be prioritizing my turn by playing advantage engines, or getting the card that I need to get. So I have the Imperious Seal, Demonic Tutor. Reanimate, I think, is just I think it's too good to pass up, especially when I'm potentially milling other people's libraries and I can't get something with Gyruda, right? So I can't hit those 1s, 3s, 5s, and 7s. But sometimes I'd like to reanimate a Hullbreaker Horror, right? It's just as good as Tidespout Tyrant. So Reanimate's really good for that. Right. And then also Toxic Deluge, I think it's just a great board wipe. I can pay 5 life and my Gyruda stays around and get rid of pretty much anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Toxic Deluge. I played in Blue Farm. It's just so good. It gets around like all these annoying like hexproof and indestructible things, and it's just
and ward.
There's really no replacement.
Ward.
I'm convinced this is like one of the big reasons that Tyam just doesn't see play as much. I mean, I know because I've played against Tyams and I've just tutored for this card, and there's like, I don't know, there's just not a lot they can do. I mean, they have some tricks with Tyam. They can give it like +1/+1 counters, but if you're smart and you put an extra life into the ability, like, which is something I learned to do very quickly, by the way. If you play against anyone that you even have an inkling might have some sort of buff effect, Soul Cauldron or what have you, just put a couple extra points into that Toxic. It's not...
2 extra life is so much more important than their creature surviving.
Exactly. And if that creature lives, it's gonna whack you for... Yeah, if the creature stays around, it's gonna whack you for more than 2 damage anyway, probably, right? So you might as well just pay the extra life.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get on to your instance. So this is just as chunky as your creature package. We're on 24 instance, and we're on 24 creatures. So to start us off, we have Brainstorm. Now, we don't see this card that often in cEDH. We do see it in Vintage. Is Abandoned Vintage? We see it in Legacy, something like that.
Oh, it's in Legacy. It's a Legacy and Vintage. It's a Legacy All-Star. We're just going to see it in this deck, Nybar, because what does your deck do? What does your commander do?
It mills 4 cards, and any creatures in those 4 cards I get to put directly into play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so
any one creature.
Any top deck
You cheating bastard.
Yep. So if my Deadeye Navigator is stranded in my hand, I can pull it on top.
Yeah. And then
really went by stacking.
Yeah, and then you get a clone, and then you just have an uncounterable way to get like any even mana value onto the field. I mean, they could counter the clone, but like,
Mhm.
how often does that really happen, right?
Really only happens when they have Force of Will.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe sometimes mana drain Tivits are like that card.
Yeah.
All right, so Dark Ritual we can skip over. I hope everyone knows what that is. If you don't, just
Hopefully.
Google it. You'll find out real fast what it does if you play this game. Essence Flux. Talk to us about this a little bit.
I don't do too much blink in the deck, but I will have a little bit here and there because being able to blink Gyruda gets more value. I think is really handy in the deck, especially as a way to protect Gyruda. So say if someone's trying to red blast it or swords it, I'm like, I'd rather stick around for a while and also get a little bit more value. I can just blink it real fast for 1 blue, get another Gyruda trigger. It's a really efficient cost.
Yeah.
This also dodges a lot of removal very uninteractively. It's one of my favorite like little blink cards because straight up there is no space in between its dodging and coming back in, which means people, if you're like blinking a stacks piece for some reason, people don't have an interval. And then it gets a 1/1 counter.
Yeah,
yes.
If it's a spirit.
Yeah. Okay. So Flusterstorm, very standard. Mental Misstep, we see this everywhere. Stifle, we don't see this everywhere.
Yeah, I wanted to include some hate on activated abilities because or triggered abilities, activated abilities, either one of those, because there's a lot of those going around in our meta, as we're seeing a lot of Sisay pop up. And then it's also just generally good against, Thassa's Oracle, Ranger Captain of Eos, Dockside. So, and those abilities are game-winning abilities. People play those for those abilities. And so being able to, if you're not able to counter the card, you can counter the ability.
Right.
Also hits fetches.
Also hits fetches. If you want to be evil, you can do that.
Come on. I know you've done it at least once.
I have not done it. Not yet. But if I ever catch
God, you're
Freedom
gonna do it
Waffle
again against me.
If I ever catch Freedom Waffle in one of my pods, maybe I'll do a repeat.
God damn.
Hey man, if you got a good player going first and they like start off with a fetch, or I guess you'd need them to go like second or something. But yeah,
Gemstone.
Or I have a gemstone. Yeah, exactly.
Gemstone. Yeah.
Gemstone. Not old. If you're in second position, you have a gemstone and a stifle. Just stifle their fetch, so you're technically the first player.
Yeah. You
This was a mode 5, guys. I'm player 1. Yeah, I'm player 1 this game. Look at me. I'm going first.
But yeah, I think generally just an all-around good, versatile tool to respond to just the meta's just a ton of abilities that are out there.
I love that you're on Stubborn Denial. People that don't know, Stubborn Denial is a 1 mana counter target spell unless non-creature spell unless they pay 1. But if you're if you have a creature out with power 4 or greater, it just counters the non-creature spell for 1 mana. Works great if your commander's got that power.
Yep, we are 2 over.
We see it in Narset a lot. Yeah. We're very much hitting that threshold very easily in this deck. It's also great if your commander has like prowess. Like if you're running Elsha, you should definitely be running this card. Same with Narset. If your commander has some weird hump ability, it's great. But in this deck, it's literally the whole game plan is to once it starts, you don't stop, and this prevents people from bouncing the Gyruda in response to its trigger, which I'm assuming happens.
It can happen, yeah.
Smart players will go like, I don't want the clones to hit Gyruda and keep this going, so I'm going to bounce your Gyruda, I'm going to remove it, and you just kind of go like, nah.
Yep, and for 1 blue mana, it's really hard to beat when most of the time it's online. Other times, it can just be a really good tempo play. If you notice someone's tapping out for a Rhystic setting, you're like, you don't have the mana to pay the 1, even if I don't have Gyruda out. It has some good utility, even if you don't have it out.
Right.
Hey, Mana Tithe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
blue mana tithe. Right.
Oh man, we're going off the rails on this Kraken train. Like, we obviously got Swan Song because Swan Song is one of the best counter spells in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Vampiric Tutor because stacking the top of your deck is key, and also it's Vampiric Tutor.
Right.
Cabal Ritual. If you don't know what Cabal Ritual does, you'll soon find out. We got Cyclonic Rift, but delay.
Yeah,
Why the delay?
It's a very well. So the main reason is because it just says counter target spell, which means it hits every spell in the format. If I don't want someone playing their Thoracle, and I don't have a way to counter their Tanipact or Demonic Consultation, then I can counter their Thoracle. If I want to counter their Tivit or their Atraxa, right, I can get creatures with this, which is the important thing. You can counter creatures.
Right.
If I'm not able to make use of those creatures, or if I think that them resolving a creature is going to win them the game that turn.
That makes sense.
Okay, so basically, this is your fail safe. This is your I need to not die this turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you can have it in 3 turns because I will die to it this turn.
Exactly, and it's fairly costed, right, at 1 and a blue. For that ability. So it's not like Mana Drain where you're having to pay 2 blue, but in a Dimir deck, I don't think having to pay 2 blue is really that hard either.
True. The next up we have...
I see the Disperse.
Yeah, we have Disperse. So this is 1 in a blue. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If I'm not mistaken, there are different versions of these effects, right? Like there's Alchemist's Retrieval...
Yes, and admittedly, I should be an Alchemist Retrieval. I think, right? Because does Alchemist Retrieval hit every non-land permanent, or is it only creatures?
I think it's a strict upgrade to this card.
Okay, I'll probably change it to Retrieval, but I think I put in Disperse just because I have it on hand. I don't have a copy of Alchemist Retrieval. But essentially, this slot is dedicated to I need to bounce this Grafdigger's Cage, or I need to bounce this Bloodchief Ascension.
This Torpor Orb.
This Torpor Orb, exactly, yeah.
Right.
Anything that's messing with my game plan, this will hit it.
Right, and it's not like you don't feel bad about using this like you would a Cyclonic Rift.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, the Alchemist Retrieval, it's just a straight up this for 2 mana. For 1 mana, it only hits your stuff. For 2 mana, it hits anybody's non-land stuff.
Yeah, but I like that. It is an upgrade. It has more flexibility if I want to, hey, I don't know, bounce a copy or my clone up someone's dockside and replay it again as a dockside, right? That's really nice. So yeah, I'll probably make that change here.
The long goodbye, bro. Come on. Do you really want to do stuff uncounterably?
Oh yes. I've been in situations where other players will counter my removal of someone else's thing that's keeping me from casting Gyruda because they're afraid of Gyruda. So like trying to get rid of a Dranith or get rid of Containment Priest or something of that nature, I want to make sure that I am going to get rid of it and nobody can stop that.
Nybar, people are afraid of demon krakens?
They are. Almost unreasonably so.
Just stay out of the water, guys. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Don't go in the deep end.
Next up, we got Mana Drain, which makes complete sense in your deck. Your commander costs 6, and this also plays into what you were talking about earlier with delay, where it hits anything, like not just non-creatures, it hits creatures too. And it will ramp you into your Gyruda turn.
Yep. I always love seeing Mana Drain in the early game because it means I can hit something. I don't even need to hit something big. Like anything like 3 mana or higher, I'm happy hitting with it, and I can use that mana towards playing Gyruda a bit faster.
Right. Resculpt. Why Resculpt?
Just a great removal piece. Also hits artifacts, which notoriously Dimir has trouble hitting, right? Like permanently removing artifact hate or stacks pieces, I mean. So yeah, getting rid of the Grafdigger's Cage, getting rid of the Weathered Runestones, Torpor Orbs, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have Tainted Pact.
Mhm.
Of course, this needs no introduction. This combos with Oracle, and it also acts as a pseudo tutor. Next up, we have Dismember. Talk to us about why this option.
It is just a good removal piece for creatures. In a pinch, all you have to do is pay 1 generic mana and 4 life to give a creature -5/-5 until end turn.
Mhm.
So that'll get rid of most problematic creatures. It gets around indestructible, which is really nice if that is an issue. Yeah, just a good all around removal piece for creatures.
Right.
Also, since you're only in 2 colors, that double black is not as unachievable as it is for some other decks.
If I
For
need to
you, it's like,
conserve,
well, do I want to pay life?
yeah, if I need to conserve life, I can pay that double black very easily. If I need to conserve on mana, I can pay the 4 life.
Right.
Very flexible.
Okay, Fierce and Force are just Fierce Guardianship, standard counterspell, Force Negation, very standard. Samurai, you want to take the old Flicker?
I'll take a flick at this. Ghostly Flicker is 2 colorless and a blue mana. Exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. Gee, I wonder what you would like to hit with this.
Gee, I wonder indeed. Yeah, just like with Essence Flux, this is really nice to just target Gyruda, get another ETB, and incidentally something else, whether that's another copy of Gyruda or something like Massacre Worm, or if you need more mana, you can target one of your rocks or lands, and that just it's just a great all-around card for the deck.
Yeah.
Have you done a loop with this with someone trying to go for a dual caster loop?
I have not, but I do know of that loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a combo with it.
You
I
want to
think-
explain?
I think it needs one other piece, does it not? It needs Dual Caster Mage, Ghostly Flicker, and something else.
Well, you just need one other outlet, right? Like, so they flash
Like-
out a Dual Caster Mage. Their ETB
Mhm.
goes on the stack. Yeah, you would need
I got this.
to clone. Yeah, you would need to put Ghostly Flicker on the stack, and then you would need to clone. What's it called again?
Dual caster with stun double.
Yeah.
So this would allow you, if you had the One Ring, this would allow you to draw your whole deck.
Mhm.
If you have a land, this allows you to make infinite mana.
Yep.
If you say had another clone, this allows you to go infinite clone and ETBs. Basically,
Oh, yeah.
this is like the ultimate, like, if you know that they're on like a dual caster line, like a Corval deck or like a Odd Nyx decks where they're showing up more and more. If you have this in the stunt double, you should just be like, I'm just gonna hold up this mana. Nothing suspicious, and they're gonna be like, probably a cyclonic, and then you just go like, it's not.
It's a win. It's a win on the stack. Watch out.
Obviously we're on Mind Break Trap because Mind Break Trap is good. Snuff Out. So you're playing swamps.
I'm definitely on some swamps. Yep.
Snuff Out reads for 4 mana, black and 3 generic. It's an instant. If you control swamp, you pay 4 life instead of paying that mana cost. Destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. Very few times have I seen people pay the 4 mana, but every so often someone has a Boromir out and you just got to pay it.
Yep.
You're on Force of Will, which, surprise, surprise. Now, your artifact lineup, I think we can just go ahead and skip the rocks and just talk about your enchantments, because you are just on every rock that you can be on in Dimir.
Yep. Nothing interesting in the artifact package. Enchantment wise, we're on Mystic Remora, Ristic Study. Those are pretty self-explanatory, but I do have some other interesting enchantments to talk about.
Yeah.
You've got some sizzle in your enchantments.
Yeah, you got some
I
spice.
do. So I think first up is Heartless Summoning, which is 1 in a black. Creature spells I cast cost 2 less to cast. Creatures I control get -1/-1. I don't think everybody cares about the -1/-1. Going from a 6/6 to a 5/5 isn't the biggest deal in the world. It still hits pretty hard. However, going from 6 mana to 4 mana, that's a huge benefit.
going from 4 mana to 2 mana on your clones also seems okay.
Yep. Yeah. Being able to save on all the clones in the deck, yeah, reducing the cost of my creature package is just a huge benefit. It makes the deck go by it just goes so much faster with this out.
Right. Stealing enchantments.
Are you gonna play? Does he want any of his own cards? It feels like he just wants his opponent's stuff.
What can I say? I like to say sometimes I play other people's decks better than they do when I'm playing Gyruda.
You're not wrong.
Steel Enchantment is great for this meta. As everyone knows, we're kind of in that mid-range, kind of mystic hellscape, right? And so this is a great way to kind of, gain control of that meta. 2 and a blue, gain control of enchanted enchantment. So take the mystic, take the Ristic, take Smother and Tithe if I need to, take Bloodchief Ascension if that's giving me problems, right?
Take that blind obedience.
Take blind obedience, exactly. And yeah, great piece. I think enchantments. Every deck has at least a couple of them, and the ones that are in there are very powerful. So I think this is just a great piece to have.
1 or 2. We've talked about this being your advantage engine. This is one of the most underrated cards in the format, I think. You want to explain what Black Market does?
Sure. Yeah, I love Black Market Connections. It's for 2 and a black. You get an enchantment that says at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you can choose 1 or more of the following. You can create a treasure token for 1 life. You can draw a card for 2 life. Or you can create a 3/2 colorless changeling for 3 life. That last part's not really that relevant unless I really need like a blocker for something. But being able to pay 3 life for a card and a treasure, get card advantage and mana ramp. Really nice to have on an enchantment, especially if I can get this out turn 1, which is really great. It means I've had 3 mana to play the Black Market, and then I'm guaranteed to get a treasure and a extra draw on my next turn, which is really good and crucial to getting Gyruda out faster.
Yeah, more people need to be on this card. Especially if you're on a non-Nas deck. For some reason, I couldn't tell you why. Nybar doesn't run ad Nas. Maybe it's because your CMC is like 3.4.
Yeah, the average CMC of this deck is 4 with how many clones there are.
Yeah. So when you don't have to run Nas and you're not a peer deck, because this is not a peer to the Abyss deck. It just isn't. There's no reason to be on that. You might as well run a continuous advantage engine, and I think people need to understand how important those are. That's why Trouble in Pairs is so good. That's why you should be on Black Market Connections if you can't run Nas. But looking at your lands, you got like 2 really spicy ones.
Yeah, the land package isn't super crazy. I think the standouts are probably Cavern of Souls and Cecily Coliseum.
No, you got another one.
I got another one?
That's very, very bottom right before the Verdant Catacombs.
Oh, the Urza Saga? Yeah, I think Urza Saga is great. It's just another way to get more of your mana out of your deck and into the battlefield. And it's going to happen over time. It's going to happen a little slowly, but if you are in a pod that's going to go, those extra couple turns, then Urza Saga is not bad for sure.
Right.
More importantly, your deck does not run its own creatures very well. Like most your creatures are clones or take other people's creatures or a little bit overcosted. So having access to this Urza Saga to make blockers should save you a pretty penny on your life total.
Yes, I did hilariously at one point. I think Gilded Drake, someone else's Seedborn Muse, and then was able to make 3 or 4 constructs with an Urza Saga. And that was a long time. I think it was a game last summer that I did.
My God.
You can get into some really crazy situations with this deck because you are playing everyone else's deck.
Seedborn Muse is better in other people's deck. Go figure. Notably, you're not on Otawara because it's just a 4 mana spell for you.
He is. He is on Otawara.
I am on Otawara. Yes.
I don't think you do that. I thought.
With Gyruda out and having clones of Gyruda out, sometimes it really is only just 1 blue to play it. But again, I think if you're a blue deck, you need to be running Otawara. I think even like the 4 and 5 color decks are playing this card. Having a channel ability that removes a permanent temporarily from the battlefield, I think is super crucial. You should not be running, especially your Dimir decks. Like all Dimir decks should be on Otawara, no question.
And then
Have you thought of-
Cephalid, you are a mill deck.
Have you thought about running Takenuma, perhaps?
I could be convinced to run Takenuma. There is some utility in that. I don't know what I would take out. I might take out something like Urborg or maybe one of the Clearwater pathway. But yeah, I also just don't have a copy of it, so that's why it's not in the list.
Okay. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's not too bad in terms of price, but
yeah.
No. Okay. Well, I think that's about it in terms of our deck. I'm trying to see if there's any other kind of interesting lands that might pop out. No, that's about it. Urborg is probably the last kind of non-standard one.
Yeah, other than Cavern of Souls and Cephalid Coliseum, and then Urborg. Urborg, the nice thing about Gyruda is that it's Dimir hybrid, right? So being able to turn my colorless lands into lands that tap for black for Gyruda is really nice.
That makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So next up, we just have our section for shoutouts, or if there's anything else you'd like to kind of say or explain about the deck, go right ahead. Maybe you got an LGS or some friends that maybe helped you build the deck. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, sure. I'll shout out my my buddy Scotty, or what I think his handle on Discord is going to be I'm always tilting. He built the deck. I think he did an exact copy of the deck, and he's been running it and having some success with it. Not so much in tournaments. I don't think he does those too often, but I think just like in general spell table play and leagues, he's done really well with the deck. And also spread the good name of the Demon Kraken.
Okay. All right. So the very last thing we have got for you is the spicy scale. Now this should be in that document I sent you. So we have a very, very scientific scale here. So it's going to go from 0 Scoville units, which is a bell pepper, all the way up to 2 million, which is a Carolina Reaper. And there are a few different peppers in between that. Where would you rank your deck on a scale of 0 to 2 million?
I think if you talked to me like 6 months to a year ago, I'd probably put it at the 2 million. I'd put it at the highest possible. But I've been playing this deck for a year now, and I've gotten to know it pretty well. And I think other people have caught on to it now as well. It's not the most unknown thing in the world. It has some tournament results. People are aware of its game plan generally. I'd say that the Zergo Ojtai deck, that might even be spicier than Gyruda for right now. But I will say it is a very unique deck. It is very fun to play. And so I'd probably put it at Jamaican Bell.
What did we give Dracomancer last time? Do you remember, Samurai?
I think it was like, it was a fairly like medium, like Scoville unit. I think. Let me check real quick. Spicy scale. I think it was like not like super spicy. It was like a Hungarian yellow hot wax.
It was okay. All right, then if you were lower on the scale than him, then that would make you a jalapeno.
I was gonna say it looks like a bell pepper.
Is that what he gave?
Oh my god!
Is that what he gave his decorating as? Is the Hungarian?
I'm not sure if it was that or the Jamaican Bell. It was like it was either the habanero chocolate we ended up on.
It was like medium.
Yeah, it was somewhere in that like realm.
I personally would say the Zergo Ojtai belongs probably around the habanero chocolate, and then I'm fine with Gyruda being just a step below that at Jamaican Bell.
That seems reasonable to me. What do you think, Samurai?
I think it's like a bell pepper. It's a Dimir reanimation deck.
No,
There's not a lot of variance in it. It doesn't have like a super lot of convoluted lines. It's a lot of the same cards that we've seen throughout the game. We have seen this deck for about a year. In my opinion, it's not a very spicy deck. It is just a very good deck.
I appreciate the kind words.
Yeah,
I
there's never
think
going to be a
it's got
surprise.
some
It's going to be
spice.
Gyruda and Gyruda and Gyruda and Gyruda. Like, there's no surprises.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I've never played against this deck before.
Mhm.
I would say it's pretty spicy. Like, yes, it's Demir, but like, it's not his fault he's in Demir. You know, he just happens to be in Demir.
Yeah.
It's exactly his fault for being in Demir.
It was like, I mean, with his color combinations, I mean, you might as well run Thoracle and, you know,
Yeah, it's like
Ristic and
there's
what have you.
not really a
Um,
surprise in the deck. It's just really a good deck.
But honestly, I
Fun to
think
play.
it does play very differently from, or at least the way it kind of combos out and works is different than like all the meta decks. I can't even think of one that works similar besides Atali, and that was a new one.
That is a new one. Yeah.
Atali is the only other one. Actually, Atali has a lot in common with this deck. While it's more turbo focused, it also does kind of rely on clones to get more stuff, and arguably Atali's effect is a bit stronger because you get like 4 things instead of just 1.
Oh
That-
yeah, it's way stronger because you're guaranteed to cast the spells off the top, right? You flip until
Right.
you reveal a non-land spell, and you're casting that spell. Now, whether that
Mhm.
spell is good or not, I mean, we're playing CDH. Most of these spells are going to be good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just it is just different. Like you're just trying to ramp out your commander. You know, you do your typical blue things, like you try to draw cards and all that, right? You try to grind an advantage, like a lot of decks do. But you ramp out your commander, and then you just have this like weird sequence of events where like you're just flipping into like clones, which are also your commander, which flips you into more clones that like may or may not do anything sometimes.
There are
Like-
chances to fizzle out. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you might not even hit, and sometimes you're just taking things out of other opponents, and that's not like this isn't like a Thoracle shell. Like
Mhm.
your value engines, your cloning ability is like your primary game plan, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So I
a, it's a
don't know.
it's a very reactive deck, right?
Mhm.
You played that early game to middle game reactively. You have the ability to evolve to the battlefield. If someone plays their Atali and they don't get there, hey, you get to clone their Atali and see if you get there, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the strength is in the flexibility of the deck. It's not an easy deck to play.
Mhm.
I'll give it that. It can be difficult to make the right choices. I could say that of any other deck out there. I don't think there's a lot of decks that are just very simple and straightforward. I think every deck requires some sort of skill and knowledge to pilot, and Gyruda does have a little bit higher skill required to make the right choices because you are playing clones, which allow you to make copies of other creatures, and you have to copy the right ones.
Right. Yeah, I would personally agree. I think yeah, about Jamaican Bell, maybe the Hot Wax, somewhere in that range. I mean, the only thing I could think of that remotely comes close to Tali, and really that I don't know how much that counts because that's a fairly new card.
Yeah, I think
So for-
Atali, coming out in the last year
Mm-hmm.
versus
Yeah, like this is for a whole year or so. Like this was the only commander that actually did this. I'm trying to think of like, can you think of anything that like really cares about clones? I guess maybe Godo, but with Godo the game's just over, right? It's like I don't know if
Yeah.
that really counts.
Yeah, Go's game plan is make the mana, play the commander, equip
Win.
it with Helm. There's some other lines in there, and I'll say that Go takes some skill as well, right? Being able to, everyone's eyes are on you, so you have to play that aspect correctly.
Yeah.
But as far as the kind of Gyruda Atali game plan, I'm not really sure of any decks that kind of do like that sort of style similarly as Atali does to Gyruda.
Yeah, I guess maybe Atraxa if you're running into clones, but that doesn't happen super often anyway.
Yeah, I think Atraxa probably relies more on Displacer Kitten. It does have clones, but it's only playing what the Fimage, Flesh Duplicate, and Phyrexian Metamorph. So only 3 of
Mhm.
them.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would say the closest this comes to is probably Tevish Crawl. Because you are just kind of like trying to blink a really good advantage engine that's in your command zone over and over and over again. Tevish Crom does this sort of the same thing. They love to flicker Tevish over and over and over again with a displacer kitten. You're basically doing sort of the same thing. The reason why it's not spicy, in my opinion, is there's no surprise in the deck at all. Like it's literally once you see it on the field, you're like clones.
Yeah.
It's like everything else is just knowing that it's going to be clones. That's why it's all going to come down to skill because there is no surprise. Your
That's fair.
opponents,
I think that's
your
I think
opponents know exactly what you're doing.
yeah, that's a fair assessment. I don't think at this point, I don't think there should be any surprises with the deck. I think people are fairly aware of your game plan, and the only surprises are how badly your other opponents play into the deck, right? So if someone plays Dockside and they don't win that turn, and they pass turn to Gyruda, I think people can kind of know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Exactly.
Well, that I think about wraps us up. Thank you very, very much, Nybar, for coming on and sharing with us the glory of the Demon Kraken. And on top of that, you will get a very special off-meta guest Discord role that is yours forever. You'll be a yellow name in the Discord.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. You got anything, Samurai?
No, I'm just thinking of something else. Nybar, it's always a pleasure. I hate you so much for making this deck so good. Because I keep meeting this deck. It is such a like I don't know why people don't play this deck. This deck is probably one of the most consistent like just insta gibbs for a win in cEDH right now because it literally just requires someone to slack one turn. Doesn't even require the table to slack, just one person to slack on one turn, and this deck will win. Period.
Yep, it's good at taking opportunities and running with them.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, maybe send this to a friend, and a huge thank you to our patrons, JR and Matt Tang.